I think there are two kinds of Jews in the world. There are Jews who are so engaged in their Jewishness, and then there are those who really aren't and really don't care, but they share something in common. I'm pretty sure neither of them knew that we were right now in the middle of Jewish American Heritage Month. Am I wrong about that?
Uh, I don't think you are entirely wrong about that.
I didn't know about it until you mentioned it.
Well, how about that? I teach Rabbi David Paskin a little something.
Happy Jewish American Heritage Month, everybody.
Yeah.
So before we dive into the conversation about what this is, why this is, if we need it anymore, I'll just share just 2 seconds of background on kind of where this comes from. So, American Jewish Heritage Month, excuse me, Jewish American Heritage
American.
Month, which by the way has a great acronym, JAM. Love that. It was established back in 2006 by President George Bush. It was co-sponsored by Arlen Specter and Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz of Florida. In 2016, excuse me, 18, the Weitzman National Museum of American Jewish History took over sort of the organization, the running of this, and so it is a time for the entire American world, the entire American community, not just the Jewish community, but the American community, to take note of and celebrate what Jewish Americans have contributed to the country.
Can I add
My,
two things to
yeah,
that?
yeah,
Uh,
please.
just, I think it was interesting that it actually Jewish American Heritage Month was predated all the way until 19 back as far as 1980 when there was a Jewish American Heritage Week.
Ooh,
We've
we
been elevated
graduated.
yes, elevated and graduated from
That's
a
funny.
week in the end of April to this entire month of May. And part of it, yay to South Florida, the efforts of the Jewish Museum of Florida down on Miami Beach
Really?
were, were integral to pushing this forward. So
Do you happen to know if that shift from week to month or day to month is true for any of the others?
I don't know.
I don't know either. It's interesting.
Yeah.
So the question that what you posed this as a topic, and I think my response was that sounds like about the most boring thing I can imagine, and that's in part, I think, because I was thinking about Jewish American Heritage Month from the perspective of the Jewish community, not the outside community. So, what value is there, do you think, in, and feel free to throw this back at me if you want, but I'm curious, what value do you think there is for the Jewish community in having a month that's dedicated to celebrating this? Or maybe I should say, do you think there's value?
I think that that is the central question.
Yeah.
What is the use of this month? What is the purpose of this month? And if it is to celebrate the important contributions that Jewish Americans have made to America since they arrived on the shores of New Amsterdam in 1654, uh, then are we doing it because we want to celebrate ourselves? Or are we doing this because we think others should know about this and that it's important for the
Right.
wider community, less so as something that is for the Jewish community itself. And I will suggest that there might be something in the middle that we are doing it, yes, because it's important for the wider community, but because we Jews feel a need for this, right? And
So I want to get to why, in a moment. But what you just brought something up for me, and I just want to share it. That we had talked. I forget if it was 2 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago. We've probably talked a few times about the. Oh, it was our podcast on the disappearance of the American Jew, or the disappearance of where have all the Jews gone, right? And the fundamental question then I think was, we are so integrated, comfortable at home in so many ways in American society that we've in the article that we were looking at argued that we've beginning to disappear a little bit. I'm wondering about if Jewish American Heritage Month in the Jewish world isn't quite as known or celebrated, perhaps because again, we're just, this is who we are. We're here. We're comfortable. There's why point out the obvious?
Yeah, and the question of is it really, is it beneath our dignity to name all of these influential Jews as if it is a way of
Mm,
pleading for our acceptance or our acceptability um, as Americans?
yeah,
Okay? And I think the answer is yeah, it might be beneath our dignity, but we do need it. There is a
it's
feeling
important.
within
Yeah.
the Jewish community that we need it. And I'll say uh, that I think that there is. I want to come back to that. Let's
Okay.
just put that aside because I was reading a really interesting article that talks a little bit about that. You asked the question of, is this important for the wider community? And I think the answer is actually yes, because while we may be ubiquitous within society, that isn't necessarily um, as Jews. That uh, pick any significant Jew in that the wider community knows. Okay, do they know them as a Jew, or do they have a greater understanding of Judaism from those individuals because of what they do? Okay,
Well, this
take
in some
Steven
ways this comes
Spielberg.
back. Yeah, in some ways this comes back to we did a show a while back about not Jews who've contributed to American society, but um, Jews who've contributed to Judaism, and
Right.
in some ways you're talking about the antithesis of that, and I could argue, I think, that on the one hand, take a Steven Spielberg, people don't necessarily, although I would argue that he's contributed to both, but
Right.
um,
That was
yeah,
my point.
but with the contributing to American culture piece, on the one hand, maybe people don't think of him as a Jewish director. On the other hand, some people do, to his detriment.
Yeah, but think about what he has brought to an understanding of the Jewish experience. Schindler's List,
Right.
or for that matter, the Fablemans.
Yeah.
That he is bringing an understanding of Jewish culture to the wider community. On the other hand, you know, Jonas Salk, okay, um, we tout him rightfully as a Jew who eradicated polio. But do people necessarily know him
Right.
as a Jew? Did he bring anything to Judaism? Did he bring Judaism to his work? No,
Einstein
not
also.
necessarily.
Einstein.
Oh yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. But he,
Yeah.
but there, I would say Einstein, as somebody who was a staunch Zionist, who was almost given the opportunity to lead the Hebrew University, I think did bring his Judaism to it. Um, look at all the Jewish actors and actresses. Pick any one of the the people that we hold up and say they are great parts of American society. Are they doing it because they're Jewish?
Right.
Or are we just bringing it up because, yay, we get to claim them, and look at us, where we are accepted, and we're acceptable within society because of all of these people.
I know
Right?
that on the flip side of that whenever something happens terrible, something horrible, somebody does something that's horrible. I mean, the obvious example is,
Bernie Madoff.
Bernie Madoff is,
Hmm.
my first thought was, oh my God, that sounds like a Jewish name.
Yeah, and then we're embarrassed
Right.
by that, and that's where I think we get into the question of, is this for the Jews, or is it for the wider society? For the wider society, I think it is helpful for us, and let's be clear, there are blank American heritage months for lots of others. Okay, this is not um, the only. We're not unique.
Right.
Okay, I think it is important for people to understand that Jews are an essential part of American history. That just as Americans of other ethnic and religious groups have participated in society, so American Jews have contributed their share. And going all the way back from the Revolutionary War to today, and I think it's important for people to understand, the wider community to understand, that heritage is central to our Judaism and to Jewish identity, and that heritage goes back 3,000 years, and that we have fought to preserve that cultural and religious heritage, even in the face of adversity. Um, I think it's helpful for people to understand that Jewish identity is complex, and that it is connected with Israel. And what does that mean to be both Jewish Americans and have a love and a tie to another country? And another place, a place that you and I both love um, deeply and are connected with deeply. Um, and and here's where, so I think that there is a reason to have a Jewish American Heritage Month, because it does promote understanding. It does promote um, better education. It helps fight anti Semitism. I don't want that to be the only reason. Okay? I was doing some research in preparation for this, and it almost felt that Jewish American Heritage Month was there to fight anti-Semitism, right? To combat anti-Jewish hate, to combat the narratives of the Holocaust, that we don't accept. Holocaust denialism, um, and um, that even the connection that the Jewish community has to Israel. I think it's helpful for us to have that. On the other hand, I think I question about this month and what it is, its ultimate purpose is, and maybe it changes over the time.
You know what, it as you were speaking, I couldn't help think about how tiny we are as a people, and what a ridiculous impact we've had. on this country.
Right.
I mean, it's just, I don't
It,
quite understand it, to be honest with you.
for sure, and we're so proud of it, and we have a right to be proud of it, and we
Yeah.
have a reason and a right. And but is that the reason to have this month, right? That we want to do
Right.
this
Right.
and wave the flags. And I was reading this article written by the great historian of American Judaism, Jonathan Sarna,
I was a
from
student of his at Brandeis.
at Brandeis. I was just
Yeah.
about to say, yep, at Brandeis.
Yeah.
And he wrote an article about the synthesis of Judaism and Jewish history and America. And he argues um, that we have had from literally day one, we have had this desire to be accepted, okay? And that desire to be accepted has been um, encouraged and supported and promoted by this long-standing belief that Judaism and America somehow, or Judaism and Americanism somehow reinforce each other.
Mm.
Okay? That these two traditions converge on a common path, um, and that idea has encapsulated has been a theme that's encapsulated American Jewish history for centuries. And I'll give you just a couple of examples. Mordechai Noah, who was one of the most important American Jewish leaders in the first half of the 19th century, argued on several occasions in speeches directed to Christians, okay, that American Indians, okay, our Native Americans, were actually originally Jews, okay, that they were descendants of the
Really?
lost tribes. Yes,
Oh, Descendants of the Lost Tribes. Gotcha.
descendants of the lost
Yeah.
tribes. Okay, now why? Okay, why do we need to do that? Well, because we can say that we have a rich history here, that we're integral to America. Okay,
That makes me.
it's the
Can
same
I say
thing as Christopher Columbus.
right?
The people who said
The
Christopher
map,
Columbus was a Jew,
or
right?
right? That you know what
At
that
least his
reminds me
map
of.
maker was. We knew
Right.
that.
That reminds me of. I remember learning. I was in Jerusalem. We went to where they where I don't want to use the word claim in a derogatory way, but where Christianity claims the Last Supper happened,
Right,
that it's right on top of David's tomb.
right.
And the question is why? And it's because they wanted to physically make a connection between Jesus to David, because that gives
No,
authenticity to, yeah, that's
almost
fascinating.
supersedes.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, and look, we that um, there have been many other examples. I'll give you it, and it. By the way, it has permeated all of the movements. Right? This is not a reform liberal idea. Go all the way back to Thanksgiving 1852 in the Sephardic synagogue of Mikveh Yisrael. The Sephardic Chazan Salvador Marias preached that, and I'm going to just quote this because I wrote it down: with the spangled banner of liberty in one hand and the law of Horeb, that's a euphemism for Sinai, the law of Horeb in the other, we will continue to be faithful citizens of this glorious republic and constant adorers of the living God. Faithful
Wow.
citizens and good Jews.
Right.
Okay?
And we include a prayer for our country in all of our Shabbat morning
Well, sure,
services all over the country.
that's right.
Yeah.
And is that because we have this deep seated insecurity of being booted out of America, as we've been booted out of many other countries. And so we want to make sure that there is a sense that Jews are integral to American history, a la we were actually the Native Americans are descended from us, okay, or that we are good Americans, faithful
Right.
Americans, and that really, it's not only just a deep seated, but it is also based in, at least historically, based in this idea that America was going to become increasingly a Christian, a reflection
Yeah.
of Christianity, right? And so there was those efforts to be to show the synthesis between Americanism and Judaism was a way of deflecting and counteracting and even subverting those Christianizing tendencies. They gave us a sense of reassurance concerning our place
Yeah.
and our contribution to American life as a way of neutralizing that insecurity.
Mm. Can I ask you? I'm curious what you think about specifically the place of Reform Judaism vis-a-vis Jewish contributions to American society. Um, you have a much broad.
Go ahead. Yep, keep going.
No, I was just going to say you have a much broader experience specifically within the Reform movement. I'm curious. Not that it's not a competition, so this isn't about we gave more than conservative or Orthodox Judaism, but what sort of specific um, contributions can you point to that emanate from a progressive
Sure.
mindset in Judaism?
Yeah. So the first thing that what I held up is a book by Rabbi David Phillipson, who was in the original uh, Reform movement's first class, first or maybe I'm pretty sure, first class of the uh, early Reform movement seminary, the Hebrew Union College, my alma mater. But just look at the title. Okay, and I pulled a quote out of the book. He said, "To me, my Judaism and my American citizenship were but as the obverse and reverse of the shield of what I have loved to call American Judaism, under which banner I have toiled and thought through all the years." Okay, he wants to be American and Jewish.
Yeah.
Now, to answer your question, okay, I do believe that Reform Judaism wanted to be accepted in society, so there is a natural tendency to have that synthesis. The Religious Action Center of Reform
Oh,
Judaism
yes.
in Washington D.C. That crafted uh, the civil rights legislation around the table in that building. That Jews, Reform Jews particularly, not exclusively, but Reform Jews were at the forefront of being uh, you know, they supported and wanted to encourage a the civil rights movement, and so there is no question, and you're just scrolling through.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's. I'm so glad you mentioned that. That really, in so many ways, which it's affectionately called the rack. It is so much bigger than the Jewish community, the Jewish world. It animates for progressive Jews. It
values.
animates and guides the work that we do in areas of social justice, social action. But it is um, it the
Go
impact that it
down, just go
has.
down to the abortion rights.
Yeah,
This is where we as at Temple Sinai are going to be
that's
spending a
right.
good bit of our time in reproductive rights. Um,
This is wow. This is like the almost the perfect example of specifically to the reform movement contributes in such a way that has such a larger impact on not only Judaism but American society. That's fantastic.
yeah. Uh,
Well, happy American Jewish American. By the way, that's a whole other conversation. I
yeah.
remember when I was growing up. When I was growing up, that was like the big thing. Are you a Jewish
Hey,
American or an
yeah.
American Jew?
When we were in youth group, all right. Are you a
Yes.
Jewish American or are you an American Jew?
So
Yeah, for
it's
sure.
I didn't think about it till just now, but it is interesting that I have to imagine we're incredibly thoughtful about calling this the
Jewish
Jewish
American.
American Heritage Month.
Right, right. Because maybe this is about Americans,
Yeah.
right, and the wider thing. I think we should end with a quote from George Washington, right? We know that George Washington wrote a letter to the Jews of the Rhode Island congregation. You can see a copy of that in the Touro Synagogue, and I think it really speaks to um, America offering an American investment in the Jews and only asking Jewish investment in America in return. And he says, I wish I could quote it because I wish I could just memorize it, but it's the second part that everybody remembers. The first part's kind of interesting as well. The citizens of the United States of America have a right to applaud themselves for having given to mankind examples of an enlarged and liberal policy, a policy worthy of imitation. All possess alike liberty of conscience and immunities of citizenship. It is now no more that toleration is spoken of as if it were the indulgence of one class of people that another enjoy the exercise of their inherent natural rights. For happily, here it comes, the government of the United States, which gives to bigotry no sanction, to persecution no assistance, requires only that they who live under its protection should demean themselves as good citizens in giving it on all occasions their effectual support. Happy Jewish American Heritage Month.
I love it. Thank you so much, Rabbi Litwack.
Thanks a lot.
All right, we'll see you in a couple of weeks, everyone. Have a lovely week. Bye.